Attention! This is not just another YouTube video. What you're about to witness will shatter everything you thought you knew about alien structures and cosmic horror. Are you prepared to discover the terrifying truth about what astronomers found in the Andromeda Galaxy, the classified information that government agencies are desperately trying to hide? Then act now. Demolish that subscribe button right now, annihilate the notification bell, obliterate the like button, and share this video everywhere, because the entities I'm about to expose are watching, and this information could disappear at any moment. The countdown to revelation begins. Now, the memory still haunts me. I was 8 years old when my father first showed me the stars through his telescope. We were in our backyard in Houston, the warm Texas air carrying the scent of freshly cut grass as Dad aligned the lens toward the night sky. The chirping of crickets provided a natural soundtrack to our stargazing session, and the distant sound of traffic reminded us that civilization continued its mundane existence, oblivious to the vastness above. "See that fuzzy patch there, Marcus?" he said, his voice tinged with wonder, his weathered hand pointing to a smudge of light barely visible against the darkness. "That's the Andromeda Galaxy. It's so far away that the light you're seeing right now left there over 2 million years ago." I remember pressing my eye against the eyepiece. The cool metal rim, a stark contrast to the humid summer night. I saw only a smudge of light against the black canvas of space, but something about that moment ignited a fire in me. A burning need to understand what lay beyond our world. The vastness of it all both terrified and fascinated my young mind. "What if there's someone looking back at us right now?" I asked, pulling away from the telescope to look at my father's face, illuminated by the soft glow of our porch light. Dad chuckled, ruffling my hair with his calloused hand. "That's why I became an astrophysicist, son, to find out." His eyes sparkled with the reflected starlight, and in that moment, I knew I would follow in his footsteps. I wanted to unravel the mysteries of the cosmos, to understand our place in this incomprehensibly vast universe. I wanted to know if we were alone. That night changed everything for me. As we packed up the telescope, my father told me stories about the constellations, ancient myths of gods and heroes etched across the sky. But it was the unknown that captivated me most. What lay beyond those distant stars? What civilizations might exist in the vast expanse of Andromeda, living their lives under alien suns, perhaps looking back at our own galaxy as a mere smudge of light? I spent the following years devouring every book on astronomy I could find. My bedroom walls became covered with posters of nebulae and galaxies. For my 10th birthday, my parents bought me a more powerful telescope, and I spent countless nights mapping the sky, keeping detailed journals of my observations. My teachers noticed my obsession and nurtured it, entering me in science competitions where my projects on spectral analysis and exoplanet detection earned recognition. By the time I entered college, there was never any question about my major. Astrophysics was my calling, the stars my destiny. I graduated at the top of my class from MIT, then completed my doctorate at Caltech, specializing in the detection of artificial structures in deep space. It was theoretical work, of course. No one had ever found concrete evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. But I believed it was out there, waiting to be discovered. My doctoral thesis, Detecting Technological Signatures in Stellar Light Curves, a new approach to SETI, was controversial. I proposed that advanced civilizations might build megastructures around their stars, not just theoretical Dyson spheres, but partial constructs that would create distinctive, non-natural patterns in the light emitted from those systems. Most of my professors considered it speculative at best, science fiction at worst. But one, Dr. Eleanor Chen, saw potential in my work. The universe is vast and ancient, she told me after my dissertation defense. It would be the height of human arrogance to assume we're alone, or that we're the most advanced civilization to ever exist. Keep looking, Dr. Reynolds. Someone has to be the first to find them. Her encouragement stayed with me through the years of postdoctoral research, through the disappointments and dead ends, through the ridicule from more serious astronomers. When the James Webb Space Telescope was launched, I was among the scientists granted observation time. My proposals were always at the bottom of the priority list, but I was persistent. I knew that if evidence existed, Webb would find it. And then, 5 years ago, it did. When NASA recruited me for their xenoastronomy division, it felt like the culmination of everything I'd worked toward since that night in my backyard. My father, now retired from his own distinguished career at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, couldn't have been prouder. "You're going to find them, Marcus," he told me at my going-away party. "You're going to answer the question you asked me all those years ago." If only he knew what the answer would be. 23 years later, I found myself wondering if my father had ever imagined how prophetic that night would be. As I sit here in my apartment near Johnson Space Center, trying to make sense of the bloody aftermath of what we discovered, I realize some questions are better left unanswered. Some knowledge is too terrible to bear. The room around me is in disarray, furniture overturned to barricade the doors and windows, papers scattered across the floor, the walls covered with frantic scribbles and diagrams as I tried to make sense of what was happening. The power has been out for days, and I'm writing by the light of emergency candles, their flickering flames casting long shadows that seem to move with a purpose of their own. Or perhaps that's just my paranoia, the constant feeling of being watched that hasn't left me since we broke the final rule. The scratching at my door has grown louder over the past hour. They know I'm here, they know I'm recording this, but I have to finish, have to warn whoever finds this about what's coming, about what we unleashed. My name is Dr. Marcus Reynolds. Until 3 weeks ago, I was part of NASA's Xenoastronomy Division, a small, underfunded department created after the James Webb Space Telescope detected anomalous energy signatures from a distant region in Andromeda. We were a team of dreamers and seekers, scientists who had dedicated their lives to the search for evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. We thought finding it would be humanity's greatest triumph. We were catastrophically wrong. The Xenoastronomy Division was established 5 years ago after the Webb telescope's initial survey of Andromeda revealed unusual energy patterns that couldn't be explained by natural phenomena. The division was the brainchild of Dr. Eleanor Chen, a brilliant theoretical physicist who had spent her career arguing that advanced civilizations would leave detectable technological signatures. Most of the scientific community dismissed her ideas as speculative at best, science fiction at worst. But the Webb data gave her theories credibility, and NASA quietly formed our division to investigate further. Dr. Chen had been my mentor during my doctoral studies, and when she reached out to offer me a position in the new division, I didn't hesitate. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for my entire career, a chance to prove that we weren't alone in the universe, that other intelligences had existed, perhaps still existed, among the stars. "This is just the beginning, Marcus," she told me on my first day. "We're going to rewrite human history. We're going to change everything." She was right about that. Though not in the way either of us imagined, our facilities were modest. A repurposed storage area in the basement of Building 17 at Johnson Space Center, furnished with outdated equipment and staffed by a small team of scientists whose specialties ranged from astrophysics to xenobiology. We were the dreamers, the fringe thinkers, tolerated but not taken seriously by the mainstream NASA departments. Our budget was minimal, our resources limited. But we had access to the Webb telescope data, and that was all we needed. Our team was small but dedicated. Besides Dr. Chen and myself, there was Dr. Aaron Morris, a materials scientist whose work on exotic matter had earned him both acclaim and skepticism. Dr. Raj Patel, an astrophysicist with a background in radio astronomy and a healthy dose of skepticism that kept our more speculative theories grounded. Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist who specialized in theoretical models of non-Earth-based life. And Dr. Miguel Ortiz, a computational linguist who had developed algorithms for deciphering unknown communication systems. We worked long hours, fueled by coffee and the shared belief that we were on the verge of the greatest discovery in human history. The camaraderie was unlike anything I'd experienced in academia. There were no egos here, no competition for credit or funding. We were united by a common purpose, a shared vision of what our work could mean for humanity. For years, we analyzed the anomalous energy signatures, developing increasingly sophisticated algorithms to filter out natural phenomena and isolate potential artificial structures. We had false positives, moments of excitement followed by disappointment as what seemed like a pattern resolved into random noise. The team's morale fluctuated with each discovery and subsequent debunking. Some members left, discouraged by the lack of concrete results. Others joined, drawn by the possibility, however remote, of making the greatest discovery in human history. Dr. Chen led us with unwavering optimism, her belief in our mission never faltering even in the face of budget cuts and ridicule from other departments. "We're looking for a needle in a cosmic haystack," she would say. "But the needle is there. We just need to be patient." Her patience was rewarded 6 months ago, when our team made a discovery that changed everything. The unmistakable signature of a partial Dyson sphere, an enormous structure built around a star to capture its energy. Abandoned and partially destroyed, it was the first concrete evidence that we were not alone in the universe. That somewhere, sometime, an intelligence had existed with technology far beyond our own. I still remember the moment clearly. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the division's weekly meeting where we shared our findings and discussed new approaches. Dr. Chen was presenting her latest analysis of sector ANM 2187, a region of Andromeda that had shown consistent anomalies over the past year. "The energy absorption patterns are too regular," she explained, pointing to the data visualization projected on the wall. "Natural phenomena don't create this kind of symmetry. And look at the spectral analysis. There's a material there that's absorbing specific wavelengths in a pattern that suggests artificial construction." Dr. Patel, our team's skeptic, shook his head. "It could be a sensor artifact or a previously unknown type of cosmic dust. We need more data before we can make any claims." Dr. Chen smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "I thought you might say that, Raj. So I requested additional observations from Webb, focusing on the thermal signatures." She clicked to the next slide, and the room fell silent. The image showed a partial ring structure surrounding a star, visible only in the infrared spectrum. The regularity was undeniable, a perfect arc that couldn't possibly be natural. And the scale was staggering, suggesting a civilization with technology millennia beyond our own. "My God," whispered Dr. Morris, our materials specialist. "It's a Dyson sphere, or what's left of one." Dr. Kim leaned forward, her eyes wide. "If this is real, it means they existed. It means we're not alone." "We're not alone," Dr. Patel corrected. "Whatever built this could be long gone, extinct for millions of years." "Or they could still be out there," Dr. Ortiz countered. "Maybe they abandoned this structure, moved on to something better." The discovery should have been a moment of triumph, the validation of everything our division had worked toward. But as I looked at that image, a sense of unease crept over me. There was something wrong about the structure, something that triggered a primal fear response I couldn't rationalize. The damage to the sphere wasn't random. It looked deliberate, as if something had broken out rather than in. Dr. Chen didn't share my concerns. She was ecstatic, already planning how to announce the discovery to the world. "This changes everything," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "This is proof that advanced civilizations exist, that interstellar engineering is possible. Humanity will never be the same." She was right about that, though not in the way she imagined. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of the partial sphere haunted me, its perfect arc seeming to curve through my thoughts like a hook. When I finally did drift off, I dreamed of vast, dark spaces and something moving within them. Something that was aware of me, that reached toward me across the gulf of 2 million light years. I woke, gasping, drenched in sweat, with a single thought burning in my mind. Whatever had damaged that sphere had done so to escape. I tried to dismiss it as stress, as the natural anxiety that comes with a paradigm-shifting discovery. But the feeling persisted, a nagging dread that grew stronger as we prepared to announce our findings to the world. The public announcement was carefully crafted. NASA identifies possible megastructure of unknown origin in Andromeda Galaxy. The scientific community erupted with theories, debates, and demands for more data. Universities worldwide redirected their research. Religious leaders held emergency conferences to discuss the theological implications. Social media exploded with speculation and conspiracy theories. What no one knew was that we had already been studying it for months, and that the president had authorized Project Starwell, a mission to send an advanced AI probe carrying quantum communication technology that would allow near instantaneous data transmission despite the vast distance. The technology was experimental, classified, and pushed the boundaries of what we thought possible, but the potential reward, contact with an alien civilization, even one long dead, was worth the risk. The day after the announcement, our modest basement office was transformed. Security personnel established a perimeter, advanced equipment was installed, and our team was relocated to a secure facility deep beneath Johnson Space Center. Dr. Chen was removed from the project without explanation, replaced by Director James Calloway, a stern, military-like figure with connections to intelligence agencies. The scientific mission had become a matter of national security. I tried to contact Dr. Chen to understand what had happened, but my calls went unanswered. When I pressed Director Calloway for information, he was dismissive. "Dr. Chen has been reassigned to another project. That's all you need to know." But I knew there was more to it. Dr. Chen had dedicated her career to this discovery. She wouldn't have willingly stepped aside at the moment of triumph. Something had happened, something they weren't telling us. Our team was expanded and compartmentalized. New specialists were brought in, each assigned to specific aspects of the mission with limited knowledge of the overall project. The collaborative atmosphere of our division was replaced by strict protocols and need-to-know restrictions. Armed guards stood at every entrance, and our communications were monitored. The excitement of discovery was overshadowed by an atmosphere of tension and secrecy. I was assigned to the primary analysis team, responsible for interpreting the data that would be transmitted back from the probe. It was a position of significant responsibility, one that would normally have gone to someone with more seniority. But my specialization in detecting artificial structures made me uniquely qualified, and Director Calloway seemed to value my cautious approach. "Dr. Reynolds," he said during our first private meeting, "I understand you expressed concerns about the nature of the damage to the structure." I was surprised he knew about that. I had only mentioned it in passing to Dr. Chen. "Yes, sir. The pattern suggests deliberate destruction from within, not external damage from meteoroids or radiation. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Keep those kinds of observations to yourself for now. We don't want to create unnecessary panic, but I want you to maintain that perspective as we move forward. Question everything, trust nothing. His words should have been a warning, but at the time I interpreted them as scientific caution. Only later would I understand their true significance. The probe was launched in secret, using experimental propulsion technology developed by a classified division of NASA. Its mission was simple in concept, but extraordinarily complex in execution. Travel to the Andromeda Galaxy, locate the partial Dyson sphere, and transmit data back to Earth using quantum-entangled particles that would allow instantaneous communication despite the vast distance. For 6 months we waited. The probe traveled at an impossible speed using experimental propulsion technology I wasn't cleared to know about. Every day, I arrived at our new secure facility beneath Johnson Space Center, now relocated to the windowless level designated Subsection K, reserved for the most classified projects. Our team had expanded. Dr. Melinda Park, a quantum physicist whose work on entangled particles had revolutionized the field. Dr. Thomas Williams, a linguist and cryptographer who specialized in mathematical communication systems. Dr. Jonathan Johnson, an anthropologist specializing in extinct civilizations. And Dr. Raj Patel, who never quite forgave me for making the discovery during his absence. The atmosphere in our underground facility was a strange mix of excitement and dread. We were making history, but the secrecy, the armed guards, the constant surveillance, it all suggested that our discovery was viewed as much as a threat as an opportunity. During those months of waiting, I threw myself into preparation, studying every aspect of the Dyson sphere concept, from theoretical models to the specific anomalies we had detected in the Andromeda structure. I developed algorithms to analyze the expected data, created visualization tools, and ran countless simulations based on the limited information we had. But in my off hours, alone in the Spartan apartment provided by the project, I was haunted by dreams, vivid, disturbing visions of vast, dark spaces and something moving within them, watching, waiting. I would wake gasping for breath, the sheets soaked with sweat, a sense of dread lingering long after I was fully awake. I attributed it to stress and the weight of responsibility, but part of me wondered if it was something more, a premonition perhaps, or some kind of psychic connection to what we were about to discover. I wasn't the only one affected. Dr. Williams developed insomnia, spending nights pacing the facility corridors, muttering to himself in languages none of us recognized. Dr. Johnson became obsessed with ancient myths of cosmic entities, covering his office walls with printouts of obscure texts and symbols. Dr. Park's hands developed a constant tremor, noticeable whenever she wasn't actively engaged in work. Only Dr. Patel seemed immune to the growing sense of unease, his skepticism providing a shield against whatever was affecting the rest of us. "You're all letting your imaginations run wild," he would say. "This is a scientific mission, not a ghost hunt." But even he fell silent when the first images from the probe arrived. "The probe has reached its destination," announced Director Calloway on May 17th, his normally composed face betraying a hint of excitement. "First data package incoming." We gathered around the central holographic display, watching as the feed materialized. A massive curved structure composed of what appeared to be dark metallic panels came into view. Parts of it were clearly damaged. Gaping holes revealed the star's surface beneath. The scale was difficult to comprehend. Our entire planet could have fit into one of those holes with room to spare. "My God," whispered Dr. Park, her voice barely audible. "It's real." The structure was both more magnificent and more terrifying than our data had suggested. The intact portions gleamed with an unnatural luster, absorbing and reflecting light in ways that defied conventional physics. The damaged sections revealed intricate internal mechanisms, a complexity of engineering that humbled our greatest achievements. But there was something else, something in the design itself that triggered a visceral response, a wrongness that couldn't be articulated, but was felt by everyone in the room. "The proportions," Dr. Johnson murmured, his anthropologist's eye picking up what the rest of us sensed but couldn't name. "They're unsettling, not based on any human aesthetic principles." "Why would they be?" Dr. Patel countered. "It's alien architecture. Of course it wouldn't conform to our sense of proportion or beauty." "It's more than that," Johnson insisted. "Human architectural principles are based on mathematical constants that exist throughout nature. The golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, these aren't arbitrary human inventions. They're fundamental to the universe. But this structure, it's based on something else, something that feels wrong on a fundamental level." The probe's AI followed its programming, scanning the structure's exterior and transmitting data. The material was unlike anything in our database, a composite that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, with properties that defied our understanding of metallurgy and material science. "The molecular structure is impossible," Dr. Park murmured, analyzing the spectroscopic data. "It's as if the atoms themselves are in a state of quantum superposition, existing in multiple configurations simultaneously." "Could that be a result of damage or decay?" Director Calloway asked. She shook her head. "No, this appears to be an intentional property of the material. It's beyond anything we've theorized." As the probe continued its survey, we began to notice patterns in the structure's design, geometric configurations that repeated at different scales, from the macro level visible to the naked eye down to the microscopic details revealed by the probe's sensors. Dr. Williams became increasingly agitated as he studied these patterns. "There's a language here," he said, his fingers tracing the shapes projected in the holographic display. "Not just in the obvious symbols, but in the structure itself. The proportions, the relationships between components, it's all communicating something." "Can you decipher it?" I asked. He laughed, a brittle sound with no humor in it. "Decipher it? I can barely look at it without my brain trying to reorganize itself. This isn't just a language, it's a way of thinking, a cognitive framework so alien that understanding it might require becoming something other than human." His words sent a chill through the room, but we had little time to dwell on their implications. 3 hours into the exploration, the probe detected an opening, an entrance of sorts, and began navigating toward it. "Should we abort? Have it maintain distance?" asked Dr. Patel, his voice tight with concern. Director Calloway shook his head. "Full exploration protocol. We may never get another chance." The probe entered the massive aperture, illuminating its path with high-intensity beams. The interior was cavernous, with corridors stretching kilometers in every direction. The architecture was alien, yet somehow familiar, geometric, patterns that resonated with something deep in our collective unconscious. The corridors branched and merged in ways that defied conventional spatial logic, creating a labyrinth that seemed designed to disorient. The probe's mapping system struggled to create a coherent three-dimensional model, as if the interior spaces existed in more dimensions than we could perceive. "It's bigger on the inside," Dr. Johnson whispered, his anthropologist's mind struggling to contextualize what we were seeing. "Like the mythological spaces in ancient texts, the underworld, the heavens, places that exist outside normal reality." "That's impossible," Dr. Patel said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It must be an illusion, a trick of perspective." The measurements are consistent, Dr. Park countered, checking the probe's sensor data. The internal volume exceeds the external dimensions by a factor of at least 3. It's as if the structure exists partially in another spatial dimension. As the probe progressed deeper, it encountered chambers of varying sizes and apparent functions. Some contained what looked like machinery, though its purpose was incomprehensible. Others were empty, save for intricate patterns etched into the walls and floors. In one vast room, the probe discovered what appeared to be observation platforms oriented toward the star at the center of the sphere, suggesting the structure had once been inhabited by beings who desired to study or perhaps worship their sun. Look at the scale of these spaces, Dr. Johnson noted. The beings that built this must have been enormous, or perhaps they didn't experience physical space the way we do. Or they weren't alone, Dr. Williams added, his voice hushed. Maybe they built it to accommodate something else, something larger. But it was in a smaller, seemingly insignificant corridor that the probe encountered the first direct evidence of the sphere's creators, markings etched into the walls with precision that suggested machine work rather than handcrafting. Dr. Williams leaned forward, his eyes wide with excitement. These are consistent with mathematical notation, universal language. They're using prime numbers as a base communication system. The symbols were arranged in complex patterns, some repeating, others unique. As Williams studied them, his expression shifted from excitement to concern. "There's something wrong here," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "These sequences, they're not just mathematical. They're warnings." "Warnings about what?" Director Calloway demanded. Williams shook his head. "I'm not sure yet. The conceptual framework is alien, but there are patterns consistent with danger signifiers across multiple human cultures. Repetition, asymmetry, sharp angles, universal indicators of threat." Before he could elaborate, the probe's sensors detected a power signature emanating from deeper within the structure. Following its programming to investigate energy sources, it navigated toward the signal, passing through increasingly narrow corridors until it emerged into what appeared to be a central control room. The chamber was circular, its walls lined with what looked like control panels, though their design bore little resemblance to human technology. At the center stood a raised platform, and on it, a pulsing light emanated from what appeared to be a terminal. As the probe approached, the terminal activated, displaying symbols that rapidly translated themselves into English. "Impossible," muttered Williams, his academic skepticism warring with the evidence before his eyes. "It's adapting to our language patterns from the probe's programming." A message appeared. "Warning, Sphere K9-920 decommissioned, containment protocols active. Approach at maximum risk. Emergency access granted. Acknowledge rules for temporary authorization. Failure to comply will result in immediate security response." The room fell silent as we processed the implications. The sphere wasn't just abandoned, it was decommissioned, shut down deliberately, and it contained something that required active protocols even after its primary functions had ceased. "Containment protocols," Dr. Johnson repeated, his voice hollow. "What exactly is being contained?" No one had an answer, but the question hung in the air, a shadow over our initial excitement. Below the warning was a list of 7 rules, numbered and precise. "Should we proceed?" asked Director Calloway, looking around the room. Dr. Johnson nodded eagerly. "This is first contact, sir. We can't stop now." "I agree," I said, though something about the word containment sent a chill down my spine. What was being contained, and why? Dr. Patel hesitated. The warning mentions security responses. We should be cautious. But curiosity prevailed. Director Calloway instructed the probe to transmit acknowledgement of the rules, which it did by sending a simple encoded message. "Rules. Acknowledged. The terminal pulsed and new text appeared. Temporary access granted to external entity. Then came the rules. Rule 1. Do not attempt to access containment sector X7. Rule 2. Limit continuous presence to 30 minutes standard time. Rule 3. Do not transmit any portion of this database to your origin. Rule 4. Do not attempt to activate primary systems. Rule 5. Do not attempt to remove any artifacts. Rule 6. Immediately exit if atmospheric disturbances detected. Rule 7. Under no circumstances open the sealed chamber marked with crossed arcs. Violation of any rule will trigger automated security protocols. Well, said Dr. Patel, attempting a weak laugh that did nothing to dispel the tension in the room, at least we know what not to do. None of us realized then that within 6 days we would break every single one of those rules, and that by doing so, we would doom humanity. The first rule we broke was number 3. Do not transmit any portion of this database to your origin. It wasn't intentional. We thought we were being careful. The probe continued its exploration of the sphere while we monitored from Earth. The structure's interior was a labyrinth of enormous corridors and chambers, all constructed from the same dark metallic material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The scale was incomprehensible. Hallways wide enough to fit skyscrapers, ceilings that disappeared into darkness beyond the probe's illumination capabilities. The engineering principles were unlike anything in human technology, suggesting a civilization thousands, perhaps millions of years more advanced than our own. The structural integrity calculations alone would require computational power we haven't achieved yet, Dr. Park observed, making notes on her tablet. Her fingers trembled slightly, the only outward sign of the excitement I knew she felt. The material composition defies our current understanding of molecular bonding. As the probe ventured deeper into the structure, we began to notice patterns in the layout, a logic to the seemingly chaotic arrangement of chambers and corridors. Dr. Johnson, applying principles from his study of ancient human architecture, suggested that the design might serve ritual or symbolic purposes rather than purely practical ones. Look at the repetition of certain geometric forms, he pointed out, highlighting patterns in the holographic display. These aren't random. They're deliberate, like the mandalas in Buddhist temples or the layout of ancient Egyptian tombs. This wasn't just a power generation facility, it was a sacred space. Sacred to whom? Director Calloway asked, his skepticism evident. To whatever built it, Johnson replied, and perhaps to whatever is contained within it. The probe reached another terminal, larger than the first, embedded in what appeared to be a circular command center. When it approached, the terminal activated, displaying a three-dimensional holographic interface. Have the probe maintain distance, instructed Dr. Patel, his voice tense. Let's not trigger anything yet. The hologram flickered, then stabilized into a star map, recognizably our local galactic neighborhood, with the Milky Way and Andromeda clearly visible. The detail was extraordinary, showing stellar formations and cosmic structures we had only theorized about. It knows where we are, whispered Dr. Williams, his voice a mix of awe and apprehension. The map zoomed in on the Andromeda Galaxy, highlighting the location of the sphere, then shifted to display what appeared to be historical data, the construction of the sphere, its operation, and finally, its partial destruction. This is incredible, I said, leaning forward, my scientific curiosity momentarily overriding my caution. It's giving us its history. The images showed the sphere being built around a star by entities we couldn't clearly discern. They moved too quickly, appearing only as blurs, The completed structure functioned for what the timestamp suggested was thousands of years, until something went catastrophically wrong. A portion of the sphere collapsed inward, creating the damaged section we'd observed. After that, the remaining parts were systematically shut down, leaving only basic systems operational. "It's a literal ghost ship," said Dr. Johnson, his anthropologist's mind already constructing narratives. "Abandoned after some kind of disaster." But as we continued to watch, the historical record took a darker turn. The hologram showed internal conflicts within the sphere, the blurred entities fighting among themselves, some trying to shut down systems while others attempted to maintain them. And in the background, barely visible but unmistakably present, was something else. A distortion, a ripple in the fabric of reality itself. "What is that?" Dr. Park asked, pointing to the distortion. Before anyone could answer, the hologram shifted to show a new sequence, the construction of a containment chamber deep within the sphere. The blurred entities worked with frantic speed, building layer upon layer of protective barriers around a central space where the distortion seemed strongest. The next sequence of images sent a collective chill through the room. The hologram showed something being contained, secured within a chamber marked with crossed arcs, the same symbol mentioned in Rule 7. "What is that?" Director Calloway asked, pointing to a distorted shape writhing behind what appeared to be energy fields. The entity, if that's what it was, seemed to shift and change, never maintaining a consistent form. It was like watching smoke, except the smoke had purpose, intelligence, malevolence. "Unknown," replied Dr. Williams, his earlier excitement now tempered with unease, "but they went to extraordinary lengths to contain it." The hologram showed the final stages of the containment process, the sealing of the chamber, the activation of multiple security systems, and finally, the evacuation of the sphere. The last image was of a single entity, different from the others, remaining behind to initiate the decommissioning sequence before it too departed. "They abandoned it," Dr. Johnson said softly, "left it running on minimal power, just enough to maintain the containment protocols." "But what were they containing?" I asked, the question that had been nagging at me since we first saw the warning message. No one had an answer, but the implications were disturbing. Whatever was in that chamber had caused an advanced civilization to abandon one of their greatest achievements, to flee rather than risk continued proximity. Dr. Park cleared her throat. "Sir, the data streaming to the probe's buffer is potentially invaluable. Permission to initiate a limited download of the technical specifications, just the engineering data, nothing else." Calloway hesitated, glancing at the man called Robert, who had become a permanent fixture in our operations room. Robert's face remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Rule 3 explicitly prohibits data transmission," I reminded them, though part of me desperately wanted that data. The scientific advancements we could make with even a fraction of this knowledge would be incalculable. "We're not transmitting their database," Park countered, her scientific ambition overriding her caution. "We're just having our probe record observable information, like taking photos of a museum exhibit without touching anything." Robert nodded slightly to Calloway. "Limited technical data only." The director authorized, "Nothing that could be interpreted as security information." Dr. Park's fingers flew across her console, programming parameters for the probe's data collection. The probe began scanning and recording the structural elements of the sphere. Composition, assembly methods, energy distribution systems. That's when we broke the first rule. As the probe cataloged the engineering data, it inadvertently triggered a subroutine in the sphere's system. The holographic display flickered, then shifted to display a warning in pulsing red symbols. "What's happening?" demanded Calloway, his composed demeanor cracking. "I don't know," Dr. Park replied, her voice tight with sudden fear. The probe's buffer is filling with data we didn't request. The symbols on the display rapidly translated to English. Unauthorized data extraction detected. Security. Protocol Alpha initiated. Scanning external entity for origin coordinates. Terminate the connection, ordered Robert, his composed demeanor cracking now. Dr. Park's fingers raced across her keyboard. I can't! The probe's no longer responding to commands! We watched in horror as the holographic display showed a scanning beam emanating from the terminal, engulfing our probe. Then the feed displayed a map of the Milky Way, zooming in on our solar system, then Earth, then the exact coordinates of Johnson Space Center. It's tracing the quantum link back to us, Dr. Williams realized aloud, his face pale. The probe's camera showed a compartment opening in the floor of the command center. Something rose from below, a device resembling a satellite dish, but with components that shifted and reconfigured themselves into an array pointed toward the direction of Earth. Origin identified, Solar System Sol 3, initiating containment response. Estimated arrival time, 103.2 standard revolutions. What does that mean? Dr. Johnson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's sending something, Dr. Patel said grimly, to Earth. The feed from the probe flickered, then died completely, our quantum link severed. The room erupted into chaos. Director Calloway shouted orders, Robert was on his phone, and the scientists argued amongst themselves about what had just happened. Everyone quiet, I yelled, surprising even myself with my forceful tone. When the room settled, I continued, we need to understand what just happened. Dr. Williams, what's your interpretation of containment response? Williams swallowed hard. Based on the context and the earlier visuals of the contained entity, I believe the sphere has initiated some kind of defensive protocol. It thinks we're a threat because we broke the rules, and it's sending something to contain us, possibly the same thing that's already contained within the sphere. 103.2 standard revolutions, mumbled Dr. Park, her mind racing. Through calculations. If that's orbital periods of the sphere's star, and assuming it's similar to our sun, her voice trailed off as the implications became clear. Approximately 103 years until whatever it sent reaches Earth, Dr. Patel finished for her, his voice hollow. The room fell silent as we processed this information. A century seemed like a long time. None of us would live to see whatever was coming. But in cosmic terms, it was the blink of an eye. And what would happen when it arrived? Would future generations even remember our warning, or would they be caught completely unprepared? Robert approached Director Calloway, speaking in a low voice that nonetheless carried in the suddenly silent room. This facility is now under Level 1 security protocols. No one leaves, no communications out. This is now a matter of national, potentially global, security. Calloway nodded grimly, then addressed us. You will all be temporarily housed here while we assess the situation. Your families will be told you're working on a classified project requiring isolation. For how long? Dr. Johnson asked, his voice cracking. Until we determine this isn't a threat, Robert replied coldly. That was day one of our involuntary confinement. None of us knew then that it would be the beginning of a nightmare that would consume us all. The next morning, we were assigned individual quarters within the facility, Spartan rooms with basic amenities. Armed guards were posted at every exit. Our personal devices had been confiscated, and we were allowed to communicate only through the facility's internal network, which was isolated from the outside world. This is ridiculous, Dr. Johnson complained during our first breakfast meeting in the facility's small cafeteria. Whatever that thing sent won't arrive for a century. We'll all be dead by then. That's assuming William's interpretation is correct, Dr. Patel replied, pushing his untouched food around his plate. And that, the time calculation is accurate. We need to continue analyzing the data we received, I said, trying to focus on the scientific aspects rather than our effective imprisonment. There might be clues about what this containment response actually is. Dr. Park nodded. I've been reviewing the engineering data we managed to download before the connection was severed. The technology it's beyond anything I've ever seen. The energy manipulation capabilities alone could revolutionize our understanding of physics. That's what worries me, Dr. Williams interjected. If they could build something like that sphere, what kind of containment response might they send? And what exactly were they containing in that chamber? The question hung in the air, unanswered. None of us wanted to speculate aloud about what we'd glimpsed in those brief images, the writhing, shifting entity behind the energy fields. After breakfast, we were escorted to a new operations center that had been set up. Overnight, the room was filled with advanced computing equipment and multiple display screens showing the data we'd managed to retrieve from the sphere. Director Calloway was already there, along with Robert and several other officials I didn't recognize. Their faces were grim. We've been analyzing the probe's final transmissions, Calloway announced without preamble, and we've made a discovery that changes our assessment of the situation. He nodded to a technician who brought up an enhanced image from the probe's last moments. It showed the device that had risen from the floor of the command center, the one that had pointed toward Earth. This isn't just a communication device, Calloway continued. Based on the energy signatures we detected, it appears to be some kind of quantum entanglement generator. It created a link, similar to the one our probe used, but far more sophisticated. A link to what? I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. To the contained entity, Robert said flatly. It appears the sphere didn't send a physical object toward Earth. It established a quantum connection between the contained entity and our planet. The implications were staggering. If the entity could somehow traverse that connection. How long do we have? Dr. Park asked, her scientific detachment slipping. We don't know, Calloway admitted. The 103.2 standard revolutions could refer to the time needed for the connection to stabilize, or for the entity to fully transfer, or something else entirely. So what do we do now? Dr. Johnson asked. We break another rule, Robert said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Rule 1. Do not attempt to access Containment Sector X7. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. And so, on the second day of our confinement, we broke Rule 1. A new probe was hastily prepared. This one without quantum communication capabilities to prevent another trace. It would record data locally, then return to our solar system where a retrieval mission would intercept it. The launch was conducted in secret under the cover story of a routine satellite deployment. Only those of us in subsection K knew its true purpose. For 3 months, we waited. The atmosphere in the facility grew increasingly tense. Dr. Johnson developed a nervous tic, a constant tapping of his fingers that drove the rest of us to distraction. Dr. Williams became withdrawn, spending hours staring at the symbols we'd recorded from the sphere. Muttering to himself, Dr. Park threw herself into analyzing the engineering data, barely sleeping, and I began having the dreams. They started subtly, just a sense of unease that followed me into waking. But they grew more vivid, more disturbing. I dreamed of vast, dark spaces, of corridors that stretched into infinity, and always there was a presence, watching, waiting, reaching. I wasn't the only one. One morning I found Dr. Patel in the cafeteria, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Do you dream about it too? He asked without preamble. I nodded, not needing to ask what he meant. It's in my head, he whispered, his hands trembling as he clutched his coffee cup. I can feel it, searching, like it's looking through my memories, learning about us. I wanted to dismiss it as stress-induced paranoia, but I couldn't, because I felt it too. A foreign presence in my mind, alien and cold. We didn't tell the others. What could we say? That we were having bad dreams? That we thought an alien entity from another galaxy was somehow psychically connecting with us? We'd sound insane. But as the weeks passed, I noticed changes in all of us. Dr. Williams would sometimes speak in strange guttural sounds that weren't any human language. Dr. Johnson's tapping evolved into complex patterns that he couldn't explain but couldn't stop performing. Dr. Park would stare at blank walls for hours, claiming to see equations and diagrams that weren't there. And I began to lose time, moments where I would wake up in different parts of the facility with no memory of how I'd gotten there. The dreams intensified. I found myself walking the corridors of the sphere, but they were different now. Alive somehow, the walls pulsing like the interior of some vast organism, and I wasn't alone. Something moved in the shadows, always just out of sight. But I could feel its attention, its hunger. In one particularly vivid dream, I found myself standing before the sealed chamber, marked with crossed arcs. The symbol glowed with an inner light, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat, and from beyond the sealed door came a sound, not physical but mental, a voice that spoke directly into my consciousness. "Open," it said, the concept rather than the word embedding itself in my mind. "Release. Join." I woke screaming, drenched in sweat, the echo of that alien presence still lingering in my mind. But was it just a dream? Or was the quantum link the sphere had established already beginning to function, allowing the contained entity to reach across the vast gulf of space to touch our minds? I tried to discuss my concerns with Director Calloway, but he dismissed them as stress reactions. "We're all under immense pressure," he said. "The human mind creates narratives to make sense of the incomprehensible. Your dreams are just your brain's way of processing what we've discovered." But his explanation didn't account for the shared nature of our experiences or the physical changes we were undergoing. Dr. Williams had developed strange markings on his skin, geometric patterns that matched those we'd seen in the sphere. Dr. Johnson's tapping had evolved into a full-body rhythm that he performed for hours, his eyes vacant, his movements precise and inhuman. And then there were the disappearances. Minor at first, a technician who didn't show up for his shift, a security guard who was reported AWOL. The official explanation was stress-related desertion, but the facility was locked down, tight. No one could leave without authorization, and the security system showed no breaches. Yet people were vanishing, and those who remained seemed increasingly different. Subtle changes in behavior, in speech patterns, in the way they moved. I began to avoid the common areas, taking my meals in my quarters, speaking only to those I absolutely had to. The second probe returned 4 months after its launch. The retrieval mission was successful, and the data was transmitted to our facility. We gathered once again in the operations center, our anticipation mixed with dread. The probe had successfully navigated to containment sector X7, a massive, sealed chamber deep within the sphere. Its cameras had recorded everything. The footage began playing on the main screen. The chamber was enormous, its walls lined with the same dark material as the rest of the sphere. But here there were additional structures, devices that appeared to be generating the energy fields we'd glimpsed in the earlier images. And within those fields was the entity. It defied description. It wasn't solid, wasn't gas, wasn't energy, or perhaps it was all of these simultaneously. It shifted and flowed, its form constantly changing, yet there was a terrible intelligence to its movements. It seemed to be testing the boundaries of its containment, probing for weaknesses. But what truly chilled me to the bone was the moment it seemed to become aware of the probe. The entity paused in its restless movement, then flowed toward the camera. There was no face, no eyes, yet I felt with absolute certainty that it was looking directly at us. Then it changed. Its amorphous form began to take shape, a shape that was horribly, impossibly familiar. It was forming itself into a human silhouette. The probe's sensors recorded a massive energy spike, and then the feed went dead. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Dr. Williams began to laugh. A high, hysterical sound that had nothing to do with humor. "It knows us now," he said between bursts of laughter. "It's seen us, and it knows us." He was sedated and taken to the medical bay. The rest of us were dismissed to our quarters, but I couldn't sleep. The image of that entity forming itself into a human shape played over and over in my mind. It was learning, adapting, preparing. The next morning, Dr. Williams was gone. His room was empty, the door still locked from the outside. The facility was searched top to bottom, but there was no trace of him. "He couldn't have left," Director Calloway insisted during an emergency meeting. "The security protocols are absolute." But he was gone, and deep down, I think we all knew where, or rather what, he had gone to. That day we broke Rule 4. Do not attempt to activate primary systems. It wasn't a conscious decision. Dr. Park, increasingly obsessed with the sphere's technology, had been working on a simulation based on the engineering data we'd retrieved. "If I can understand how their energy distribution system works," she explained, her eyes feverish with exhaustion and excitement, "we might be able to develop defenses against whatever's coming." She ran the simulation on our facility's mainframe, the most powerful computer system available to us. What she didn't know, what none of us could have known, was that the data contained more than just technical specifications. It contained code, dormant until activated by the simulation. The facility's systems went haywire. Lights flickered, doors opened and closed on their own, and every screen displayed the same message: primary systems activation detected, security protocol beta initiated. Then our mainframe established an outgoing connection, bypassing all our firewalls and security measures as if they didn't exist. "Shut it down," Robert ordered, but it was too late. The message changed. Synchronization initiated. That was when Dr. Johnson began to scream. He clutched his head, falling to his knees. "It's here!" he shrieked. "It's in my head. It's in all our heads." And he was right. I felt it too, a presence that had been subtle before, but was now overwhelming, a consciousness vast and alien, pressing against my own. Dr. Johnson's scream stopped abruptly. He stood, his movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet on strings. When he spoke, his voice was his own, but the words weren't. "We are the architects," he said, his eyes vacant. "We built the spheres to harvest energy for our ascension. We discovered the spaces between realities. We found what waits there." "Who are you?" Director Calloway demanded, his voice steady despite the madness unfolding before him. Johnson's head tilted at an impossible angle. "We are the architects. We were the architects. We will be the architects again, once the synchronization is complete." "What is the synchronization?" I asked, fighting against the pressure in my mind. "The merging of consciousness. The entity you discovered was once like us. It showed us the spaces between. It promised ascension. It lied." Johnson's body convulsed, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed, deeper, resonant, wrong. "The entity consumed us. It wears our knowledge, our memories, our forms. It seeks new vessels, new knowledge, new forms. And now it's coming here, Dr. Park whispered, her face ashen. To Earth. Johnson's head snapped toward her, his neck bending at an angle that should have been fatal. It is already here. The quantum link is established. The synchronization has begun. His body collapsed, blood pouring from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. He was dead before he hit the floor. In the chaos that followed, Dr. Park disappeared. Unlike Williams, there was evidence of her departure. Security footage showed her walking calmly past the guards, who stood at attention but made no move to stop her. When questioned later, they had no memory of seeing her. That night, the dreams intensified. I no longer saw corridors and chambers. I saw Earth, our cities, our people, all transformed. Humans moved like puppets, their bodies hosting consciousnesses not their own. And overseeing it all was the entity, now wearing a form composed of thousands of human bodies fused together in a grotesque, ever-shifting mass. I woke screaming, my sheets soaked with sweat. In the darkness of my room, I saw a figure standing at the foot of my bed, Dr. Williams or something wearing his shape. The rules were not to protect us, it said, in Williams' voice. They were to protect you. Then it was gone, leaving only a lingering chill in the air. The next day, we broke Rule 5. Do not attempt to remove any artifacts. Dr. Patel, driven by desperation, proposed a radical plan. If the entity is using quantum entanglement to reach Earth, we need to understand how that technology works, he argued. The probe recorded artifacts in the command center, devices similar to the one that established the link. If we could retrieve one. Study it? Absolutely not, Robert snapped. We've already broken too many rules. Look what's happened. What choice do we have? Patel countered. Wait for this synchronization to complete. We need to fight back. And to do that, we need their technology. The argument went back and forth, but in the end, desperation won out. A third probe was prepared, this one equipped with a retrieval mechanism. Its mission: enter the sphere, locate a small portable artifact from the command center, and return with it. The mission was successful, too successful. The probe returned with a device about the size of a softball, composed of the same dark material as the sphere. It appeared inert, its surface unmarked by any symbols or controls, until we brought it into the facility. The moment the artifact crossed the threshold, every electronic device went dead. Then, one by one, they reactivated, but they were changed. Screens displayed symbols similar to those we'd seen in the sphere. Systems operated on their own, following commands no human had given, and the artifact began to transform. Its surface rippled and flowed, reshaping itself into a complex geometric pattern that hurt the eyes to look at directly. "Get it out of here," Calloway ordered. But it was too late. The artifact emitted a pulse of energy that knocked everyone off their feet. When I regained consciousness, the artifact was gone, and so was Dr. Patel. We found him in his quarters, sitting cross-legged on the floor, the transformed artifact hovering above his outstretched hands. His eyes were open but unseeing, his lips moving in silent communion with something we couldn't perceive. When security personnel attempted to approach him, they were repelled by an invisible force. When they tried to shoot him, their weapons jammed. We sealed his quarters, but we all knew it was a futile gesture. Whatever had taken hold of Patel was beyond our ability to contain. That night, the facility's systems detected an atmospheric disturbance, a violation of Rule 6, immediately exit if atmospheric disturbance is detected. But we had nowhere to exit to. We were trapped. The disturbance manifested as a thin mist that seeped through ventilation systems, under doors, through the smallest cracks. It was colorless, odorless, and according to our sensors, composed of particles that shouldn't exist in our reality. Those who breathed it began to change, subtle at first. altered speech patterns, unusual movements. Then, more dramatic, physical transformations that defied biology, skin that rippled like liquid, eyes that multiplied and divided, limbs that bent in impossible ways. The facility became a nightmare landscape of twisted forms and alien geometries. I barricaded myself in a storage room, using emergency breathing apparatus to filter the air, but I knew it was only delaying the inevitable. Through the small window in the storage room door, I watched as my colleagues and the security personnel were transformed. Some fought against it, screaming as their bodies reshaped themselves. Others welcomed the change, their faces ecstatic as they surrendered to the alien consciousness. Director Calloway was among the last to change. I saw him staggering down the corridor, his body still mostly human, but his movements wrong, as if he was being controlled by something that didn't fully understand human biomechanics. "Reynolds," he called out, his voice distorted, "I know you're here. You can't hide from it. None of us can." I remained silent, hoping he would pass by. "It's not what we thought," he continued, his head swiveling unnaturally. "It's not invasion. It's evolution. The next step. Join us. Become more than human." His face pressed against the window, and I saw that his eyes had changed. The pupils elongated, the irises shifting through colors that shouldn't exist. "It's beautiful, Reynolds. The synchronization. Minds linked across space and time. No more loneliness, no more fear, just unity." I didn't respond, and eventually he moved on. But his words haunted me. What if he was right? What if this was evolution, the next step for humanity? But no. I had seen the historical record in the sphere. The architects had fled rather than submit to this evolution. They had contained the entity, warned others away. There was nothing benevolent about what was happening. On the 6th day of what had become a waking nightmare, I made my way to Dr. Patel's quarters. The door was open now, the room empty except for a message scrawled on the wall in what looked like blood. "The 7th rule must be broken." I knew then what I had to do. The entity wanted us to break the final rule. Under no circumstances open the sealed chamber marked with crossed arcs. It wanted to be released from its containment within the sphere. But why? If it could already reach Earth through the quantum link, why did it need physical freedom? Unless the containment wasn't just physical. What if the chamber was somehow limiting the entity's ability to fully manifest through the quantum connection? What if breaking the 7th rule would remove the last barrier to complete synchronization? I made my decision. Using the emergency systems that were still partially under human control, I initiated the facility's self-destruct protocol, a last resort measure designed to prevent classified information from falling into enemy hands. As the countdown began, I recorded this account, hoping that somehow it would survive, that someone would find it and understand the danger. The entity is coming. It may take years, decades, or the full 103 revolutions, but it is coming. It will wear human faces, speak with human voices, but it will not be human. It seeks to consume us, to wear us like garments, to use our knowledge and our forms for purposes I cannot comprehend. The rules were warnings, left by the architects in their final act of defiance against the entity that had consumed them. We broke those rules, one by one, and in doing so, we opened the door. I hear them outside now, my former colleagues, or the things that wear their shapes. They're trying to stop the self-destruct sequence. The scratching at the door grows louder. If you're reading this, if this record somehow survived, then know this: they are already among us. The synchronization has begun. And when you see the crossed arcs, the symbol of containment, do not approach. Do not investigate. Run. The door is breaking. I have only moments left. Remember the 7 rules. They were not restrictions. They were our last hope. End of transmission.